Some people say I'm crazy. I've been called crazy old man. I've been called the crazy dirty old man. I've been called the wise crazy old man. I've been called the crazy old white man. People keep saying I'm crazy. Well, to you people, thank you, because you're right. And this is the Crazy Old Man Network. Over 18, then I'm not talking to you. If you're under 18, I'm talking to you. You just may not want to listen to this show because it has some bad language in it, maybe sexual innuendos, and so I decided it's rated R. So, if you're a parent of a person under 18, you may want to consider not letting them listen. And I just want you to know, though, that your kid probably cusses more than I do anyway. Have a good day. Okay, my name's Lee Gaylord, and this is part of the Crazy Old Man Network, and it's called Help. Ah, dear. Anyway, we've got a problem in this country. Probably the worst problem this country's had since the beginning. We have a new president. Doesn't know what he's doing. Just about everything he does is wrong. He's a million. And so, what makes me think is that, well, I always thought Bush was the dumbest president we ever had. But Bush is Trump is. And Bush wasn't really the president. Dick Cheney was. Bush was easier to get in than Dick Cheney, so they decided to let Bush be president, but Dick Cheney would tell him what to do. Now we have Donald Trump. Like I say, he's dumber than Bush. He's a billionaire, and all he cares about is himself and money. He's got people who are very rich, billionaires, millionaires, trying to run. There's also bigots. And I'm going to play you a thing from MSNBC about him. And here we go.
The most ignorant and dangerous president in history is very busily trying to turn our closest allies into enemies. He, of course, doesn't know that because he doesn't know who our closest allies are. And he is completely oblivious to how offensive and foolish he has been in his recent phone calls with foreign leaders. The Associated Press reported today that Donald Trump threatened to send U.S. troops to Mexico to stop, quote, bad hombres down there, end quote. He said that on his phone call with the Mexican president last week. Separately, the Washington Post reported today that Donald Trump, their word, blasted the Australian Prime Minister over his request that the United States honor an Obama administration pledge to take in a group of refugees. And the president told the Australian Prime Minister, quote, "This was the worst call by far." There's the President of the United States doing reviews of your performance in his phone calls. If you're a foreign leader, he will tell you at the end just how badly you've done. Then Donald Trump's attention span snapped at that point in the phone call. What was supposed to be a 1-hour phone call with a full agenda of issues ended after only 25 minutes, leaving most of the issues on our agenda with Australia completely ignored. Joining us now, E.J. Dionne, columnist for the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst. Also with us, Ken Vogel, chief investigative reporter for Politico. And Ken, as a chief investigative reporter for Politico, you've got to be looking at these leaks, which are very clearly from the White House, with awe and hope for more.
We are salivating, and in fact, we hear that the term that has been used to describe the situation now in the White House, the comparison, which is not too different from what we heard on the campaign, is it's like the Lord of the Flies in there. It's not even factions of people necessarily, though we certainly see a little bit of that with the Reince Priebus establishment faction and the Steve Bannon sort of populist faction. It's every person for themselves. There's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of just bad feeling in there. And a lot of it stems from the top. This is the sort of culture that Donald Trump has had in organizations that he's run. And then also there's some concern because Donald Trump, the way that he's comported himself as president, leaves the potential for a lot of people to sort of take the fall. And we hear that he watches his surrogate's performance and his aides, White House aides' performance on TV, and frequently will call them after the fact and say, give them a critique, much as we heard with the Australian Prime Minister of their performance. So it's certainly a reporter's paradise at this point.
EJ, the astonishing thing about the leaks is that they include snippets of the transcripts of these phone calls that could only come from the White House. And let's listen to the Australian Prime Minister's reaction to this news tonight.
I've seen that report, and I'm not going to comment on the conversation other than to say that in the course of the conversation, as you know, and as was confirmed by the President's official spokesman in the White House, the President assured me that he would continue with, honour the agreement we entered into with the Obama administration with respect to refugee resettlement.
EJ, if you listen carefully, that functions as a confirmation for the reports, because that is what the reports indicate about what was agreed to in the phone call. He could have easily said, no, Donald Trump didn't hang up after 25 minutes of what was supposed to be an hour call. He could have easily said, no, Donald Trump didn't say this is the worst phone call he's had with a foreign leader. Could have easily denied the contents of these reports. He didn't deny a word of the reports.
Right, and so you're exactly right, and this is really madness. I mean, Australia is one of our closest friends in the world. Our alienating Australia would be like Donald Trump alienating Jared Kushner. I mean, you know, Barney Franks likes to say your base are the people who are with you when you're wrong. And Australia's stuck with us through everything. President Obama made it under the Obama administration. There was a deal to take, I think it's about 1,200 refugees. And on the same day this story by my colleague Phil Rucker broke, the State Department confirmed that, yes, Australia is a close ally. We're going to keep this deal. And then this story from Donald Trump of this conversation comes out. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have any friends left in the world if he stays at it like this. It just makes no sense at all.
And Ken, you can imagine that people in the White House who were disturbed by those phone calls, basically on the methods that we've heard in the past, might have concluded the only way to get Donald Trump to start behaving on these calls is to leak this stuff so that we talk about it on TV. And then he sees why you shouldn't talk this way on these phone calls.
Yeah, certainly there is this idea that that is the way to reach him, that he is a voracious consumer of cable news, television news generally, and that he's maybe paying more attention to what people say on TV than his own aides are telling him. I will tell you, Lawrence and EJ, that I have heard that from folks who have seen some of these transcripts of other calls, that they are potentially explosive. And so I think that there is certainly interest in seeing, for instance, what President Trump said to Vladimir Putin, and you know, whether that transcript's leaks or not, we are going to continue to sort of push for this, and there is interest in the White House and in these other countries. I mean, let's not forget the transcript of the Mexican conversation. Well, that was actually reported on by the Mexican press, who called it a humiliating sort of confrontation with the Mexican president. Obviously, that call was actually set up to sort of make nice and make peace after some of these back and forth over who's going to pay for the wall. Obviously, that type of conversation is not going to accomplish that goal.
E.J. Dionne and Ken Vogel, thank you both for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Okay. I think we've got a big problem, because I think this country is becoming the Fourth Reich, whatever, Nazi again. Our racist, white supremacists, and anti-Jewish, anti-everything but Anglo-Saxons, or Anglo-Saxon, just European white. I'm going to play later on something about good old Bannon. And, you know, like the president took the white supremacist off the terrorist list, when most of terrorism in the United States is done by white supremacists, the KKK. And so he's a good man according to the KKK, and Bannon probably is KKK. And so if you're black, you're in deep shit. If you're Arab or if you're Muslim, you're in deep shit. And if you're non-Christian, period, you're in deep shit. But they probably because they're KKK type of people. And then they want to turn the United evangelical Christian country. They want to get rid of all the other religions. And so if you aren't a Christian, you got a problem. Also, I think they want to get rid of old folks like me, because I talk against them all the time, and someday somebody may listen. And if enough people listen, I may end up in Guantanamo or some other prison. Freedom of speech is on its way out, and you're going to find a lot of things that are going to make you worried. He's alienating other countries. There's only two things that he's said that are good. That's and NAFTA. These trade agreements are part of the reason for the recession of 2008. But another reason is the banks. But old Trump is going to let the going to keep the big banks going because he makes money off of them. As president, he is going to cash in. He hasn't divested himself of the businesses and doesn't plan to. Now, if he's rich, he should give his money back to the government. But he won't. We've got the Secretary of State that's oil man, Exxon Oil, EPA, I can't remember. He doesn't believe in climate change. So we're going to go back to getting worse climate. And we're going to make China look like it has no smog at all. The big problem. I'm going to play this thing about President Bannon, and I think you'll enjoy it. So here it comes.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As protests continue across the country and globe over Donald Trump's order closing the borders to refugees and citizens of 7 majority Muslim nations, we turn to look at the man largely credited with writing the executive order, Stephen Bannon, Trump's chief strategist. Over the first 2 weeks of the Trump administration, Bannon has emerged as one of the most powerful figures in the White House. On Tuesday, the New York Times ran an editorial posing the question, President Bannon? The Times wrote, quote, "We've never witnessed a political aide move as brazenly to consolidate power as Stephen Bannon, nor have we seen one do quite so much damage so quickly to his putative boss's popular standing or pretenses of competence," unquote. Bannon is the former head of Breitbart News, a site that's been described as an online haven for white nationalists. He left the job in August to run Trump's campaign. Last week, Trump took the unprecedented step of giving Bannon a full seat on the Principals Committee of the National Security Council. While Bannon has given few interviews since Trump's election, many journalists have been scouring the archives of Breitbart, where Bannon once hosted a radio show. In a piece today, The Washington Post highlights a program from 2015 when Bannon questioned Republican Congressman Ryan Zinke, who's now Trump's nominee to the Interior Secretary. This is Steve Bannon.
There's a level of frustration and anger here in the United States that we're not prosecuting this war, and we're actually in discussions about bringing over Muslim refugees into this country with a president who's now mocking, the talk radio people, mocking the audience on talk radio, mocking the sites like Breitbart that are bringing up these issues. What say you?
Well, I think we need to do two things, or 3 things. One is we need to put a stop on refugees until we can vet. You know, we've been through a number of classified briefings.
Why stop until we vet? I don't understand. What do you mean vet? Why not just stop? Why are you going through all this thing on vetting? The opportunity cost of vetting.
Well, vetting's important because we don't know.
Why? No, you only vet, Commander, you only vet if you're going to let him in. Why even let him in?
So that's Stephen Bannon interviewing Ryan Zinke in 2015. In another program from 2015, Bannon interviews Senator Jeff Sessions, Trump's nominee to be the Attorney General. Sessions praised a 1924 immigration law which imposed a racist quota system. This is Stephen Bannon.
As it exists today, with the current laws in the books, right? This is not passing Gang of 8, correct? This is what our current laws in the books would actually allow to happen. That we would have at the end of this time period, 50 years, you'd basically have an increase in the population of 115 million people, 14 million basically from the native-born population, and 103 million would actually come from outside.
In 7 years, we'll have the highest percentage of Americans non-native born since the founding of the Republic. And some people think, well, we've always had these numbers, but it's not so. This is very unusual. It's a radical change. And in fact, when the numbers reach about this high in 1924, the president and Congress changed the policy, and it slowed down immigration significantly. And we then assimilated through the 1965 and created really the solid middle class of America with assimilated immigrants, and it was good for America. And then we passed a law that went far beyond what anybody realized in 1965, and we're on a path now to surge far past what the situation was in 1924.
That was Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions, who now could be voted to be the Attorney General, being interviewed by Steve Bannon in 2015. To talk more about Bannon, we're joined by Josh Harkinson, senior reporter at Mother Jones. His recent article headlined "The Dark History of the White House Aides Who Crafted Trump's Muslim Ban." Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Josh. Can you lay out who Stephen Bannon is, and then we'll ask you about Stephen Miller.
Well, I think at heart, Stephen Bannon is a nationalist who, he turned Breitbart News into an empire that is really one of the preeminent platforms for the alt-right, as he told us back this last summer. And he is deeply opposed to Islam on many levels, but he is basically a demagogue, in the mold of those from past eras. And I, think he's risen to power within the Trump administration based on his ability to inflame racial fears and xenophobia.
Talk about what happened this weekend. The ban through 2 executive orders that now the press secretary, Sean Spicer, is saying is not a ban, although he himself used the term many times, as did President Trump.
Right. And if you as we did at Mother Jones, we looked at his radio interviews shortly after he became Trump's campaign manager back last summer. And he has a long history of interviewing anti-Islam activists and promoting this paranoid vision of Islam as a religion bent on the destruction of Western civilization. And so I think in that context, there is no doubt that this policy is really about preventing Muslims from coming into the United States.
I want to turn to a talk that Stephen Bannon delivered via Skype in a conference held inside the Vatican in 2014. He talked about the crisis that capitalism confronts in the West and the war against Islamic fascism.
I believe the world, and particularly the Judeo-Christian West, is in a crisis. And it's really the organizing principle of how we built Breitbart News to really be a platform to bring news and information to people throughout the world, principally in the West, but we're expanding internationally, to let people understand the depths of this crisis. And it is a crisis both of capitalism, but really of the underpinnings of the Judeo-Christian West in our beliefs. We are in an outright war against jihadist Islamic fascism. And this war is I think, metastasizing almost far quicker than governments can handle it.
So there is Stephen Bannon in an address in a conference inside the Vatican a few years ago. The significance, Josh Harkinson, of what he's saying here.
Well, as you're probably aware, President Obama declined to even use the term Islamic terrorism. But here you have Stephen Bannon framing the battle against terrorism as a religious war, which is exactly what radical terrorists want. They want to present themselves as the representatives of Islam, when in fact it is a religion of millions of people that is very moderate. And that's evident in our allies in the Islamic world and their approach to governance. But Stephen Bannon is really, in this sense, playing into the hands of actual terrorists.
So let me ask you about this most recent information that has come out, that he has been made a principal on the National Security Council. What exactly this means? This man who came out of Goldman Sachs, who is the head of Breitbart News, a news haven for white supremacists and nationalists. What is he doing on the National Security Council and the significance of this, as well as the demoting of two of the traditional positions on the National Security Council, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joseph Dunford, as well as the Director of National Intelligence, currently those two positions?
Right, and this is really unprecedented. David Axelrod, Obama's political advisor, sometimes sat in on these meetings, but he had nothing close to a permanent position. And Bannon's elevation, while these other officials are demoted, really tells us that he's going to be playing a key role here on this council, which should be deeply disturbing, not just because of his radical ideology, his views on Islam, but also because he's a political operative. And his MO has always been to use policy as an arm of politics, as an arm of winning over his adversaries. And so it's scary. I mean, he could start a war just for political gain.
It's interesting to hear David Axelrod's response to Sean Spicer, who said he's being no different than David Axelrod for Obama, who is his political advisor. He'd walk in and out of NSC meetings. We're just making ourselves transparent. To which David Axelrod responded, it's amazing to go to sleep and wake up as an alternative fact. He said, I did not participate in these meetings. Sometimes I would go in to hear what people were saying, for example, about Afghanistan. But he said it's certainly very different from being a principal at the table.
Right, and I think that's the key point. Bannon is really, look at his behavior at Breitbart News, where, he had no qualms about using xenophobia to gain readers and clout. I think his behavior, he also has a famously confrontational style where he loves he views himself at war with his adversaries. He has a very black and white view of the world. And so, this suggests that he will encourage Trump to clash even more than he already does with foreign leaders around the world.
I'd like to turn to comments Bannon also made about the media in that interview last week with the New York Times, where he said the media should be embarrassed and humiliated and keep its mouth shut and just listen for a while. Bannon added, I want you to quote this. The media here is the opposition party. They don't understand this country. They still don't understand why Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Very quickly, Josh.
Yeah, so this war against the media is, a classic authoritarian tactic, discrediting the people who tell you what's going on in the world, questioning their authority to give you the facts, which, causes basically the people to not know what's up and what's down, to question, and so then that allows him to do whatever he wants with impunity, ultimately.
And quickly, Stephen Miller. Who exactly he is, this former head chief of staff of Senator Sessions, who's now one of the top advisors to President Trump.
Yeah, Stephen Miller is an interesting guy. He's very young. He's 31 years old. He was, formerly Jeff Sessions' top aide, and has been described as having a mind meld with Sessions. Is very much opposed to multiculturalism and is a nativist in the Sessions strain. He has a history from his earliest days in politics at Duke University, where he was a columnist at the campus newspaper, of writing these op-eds that are just very far right and appealing to basically he is a mini Steve Bannon. He's a demagogue in training, essentially.
And his relationship with Richard Spencer, the well-known white supremacist?
Exactly. So he and Richard Spencer, who I spent a lot of time with a few months ago, were both members of the Duke Conservative Union, and they worked together to bring Peter Brimelow, a very influential white nationalist, the head of the group VDARE, to campus to talk about immigration issues. And, Spencer told me basically that he felt he was a mentor to Miller. Miller vehemently denies this, but other members of the Duke Conservative Union told me that they did work together on this event.
Well, Josh Harkinson, I want to thank you for being with us. We're certainly going to link to your piece at Mother Jones. The piece is headlined, The Dark History of the White House Aides Who Crafted Trump's Muslim Ban.
Okay. Well, I guess we got a big problem. Like I said, our country is becoming fascist, another Nazi country, and the apartheid that we've had, we went from slavery to apartheid, and people thought that in the 60s it was pretty much over, but it wasn't, and it keeps getting worse. I live in Detroit. I call it the Gaza Strip of Michigan. Detroit, Flint, and other mostly black cities are run by the state. And it's not. What's happening is, like with Detroit, they're trying to make it another New York City. In other words, rich white folks and poor black folks. That's what they're looking at. Across the park from where I live, there was a senior citizen, and they were taking in between $800 and $900 a month for rent, part from the government, part from the seniors. And so what they did was they kicked the seniors out. Redid the place for rich folks. Rent is $2,000 a month. And the problem to me is that they've got, I look over there because I can see it from my window, and based on those, I would say it's less than half full, and it was converted a couple of years ago. Now my building, we've got the Westin Hotel across the street from us, and they condos. They were three bedrooms, I think. And the problem is that nobody wanted them. The price on them was $1.4 million. And if you wanted to, the payments on that would be something like $9,000 a month. And they almost went bankrupt because of it. So there's, around this park, there are 3-4 buildings being converted to wealthy apartments. They're trying to break. There's a lot of apartments for wealthy people. There was some condos. They were 2-story condos. And they started off asking $159,000. Probably 18 years ago. Then they raised it to $199,000. Now, last time I looked, they were $99,000. Some people took a big beating on those. The thing is that rich folks are the ones that screwed Detroit up. The problem in the black neighborhoods is that you've got the landlords that call them slumlords who live in the suburbs. I lived in a couple of those houses and just couldn't get any repair work done. There was an apartment building close to me. It had a problem with bed bugs and rats, and the city closed them down. A bunch of people were homeless. A friend of mine was one of them. And lucky for her, I almost lost my leg to an infection, and they ended up cutting off the front of it. And it's healed now, but it took 6 months to heal. They said I needed someone to stay with me. So she stayed with me. But the problem is she had bad lungs and a bad back, and she was in the hospital most of the time. Anyway, that's beside the point, but my problem was I'm diabetic, but also at the time we had bed bugs. And I was full of bed bug bites. And I found out not too long ago that bed bugs caused her to lose her leg. And I think bed bugs is what caused me to almost lose mine. Of course, sometimes I wish they would have taken it because that leg gives me all kinds of problems. But anyway, I got off the subject. But what I'm going to say is that things are going to get worse with Trump. A lot worse. We're going to have a possibility of mass extinction of the human race. Probably all. We're going to possibly end up in a nuclear war, which will destroy the human race and maybe even the planet. I doubt the planet. The planet's going to go on, and it'll rebuild. But we're going to, the old folks and the minorities are going to be shut out. We're going to lose our insurance. And we're going to start dying off. We've got a problem. And if you're young, you got to remember, someday you're going to be old. Someday you may lose your job if you have a job. Someday you may find yourself homeless. I found myself homeless. 1 year I made $100,000. 3 years later I was homeless. Lost everything. Well, I gave everything to the ex-wife, who we were still married at the time. Anyway, we got to do something about Trump. There's a possibility he is mentally ill, psychotic, and he may get kicked out for that, put in an institution where he belongs. He may get impeached. Hopefully, chance he will get impeached. But who's going to replace him?
the vice president did much better than him. Of course, if Hillary Clinton would have won, we'd probably be just as bad off too. The economy is going to go to hell. We're going to have, instead of the Great Recession. So we got a problem. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play Jeff Daniels, who was in a TV show. And he did this, and it's on YouTube. It's part of one of the shows. And the sad thing is, it's true. This country has been going downhill, actually, since the beginning. Had a couple good presidents, but they didn't last long. One was assassinated. The other one lost their re-election because of his opponent committed treason. So things are getting bad. And if something isn't done, they'll get worse. Why America is not the greatest country.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm a sophomore, and this is for all three of you. Can you say in one sentence or less what... you know what I mean. Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Will?
The New York Jets.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world?
Well, Lewis and Sharon said it. Diversity and opportunity and freedom and freedom.
I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. The Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American writing. You don't look satisfied.
One's a set of laws and the other's a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is America
not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey. And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
Sadly, it's true. People will say that they look at the Declaration of Independence and the rights and everything, and all men are created equal. That meant all white men. Didn't mean people of color, didn't mean women, and didn't mean children. It meant not just white men, but rich white men, landowners. Everybody else was not a man, not human. And it's been pretty much that way all along. Yes, women got women's rights. They fought hard. Now, they're losing those rights. So, women have a problem. And when I see women supporting Trump, I wonder why. Maybe they're as stupid as Trump. Supporting Trump. I wonder why. Maybe they're as stupid as Trump. All those people that voted for Trump, I'm going to piss you guys off, or gals, because you're stupid. All you gotta do is, and all he talks about is himself and how great he is, the people around him and how great they are. He'll sit there and have maybe 1 minute saying something good that's a lie, and the next 10 minutes talking about himself and bitching and moaning about the people who don't like him. It's sad what's happened to this country. And actually, I don't know of very many presidents that were good presidents, that really cared. The Democratic Party, probably 90% of them are as bad as the Republican Party. The Republican Party says Trump, and they say how high. The Republican Party says go shit, and they say how much. And it hurts me to see what's happening. I had someone say to me one time, you sit here and bitch and moan about our country and about what's happening, yet you're always happy. Why? The reason I'm happy is I don't have long to live. When the shit hits the fan, the odds are and I'll be sitting up there looking down saying, ha ha ha. I bet God sits up there and looks at what's happening on this planet. And he looks at Mother Nature, who's his wife, and says, what have I done? So maybe he's behind the downfall of humanity. But who's really behind the downfall of humanity is humanity. Well, I hope you enjoyed my ranting. I will improve as time goes on. I thought I was pretty good towards the end of my period of doing the shows before. I thought I got better and better. And hope I do again. But I'm going to sign off now. When I do the shows, when am I going to do shows? I don't know. I hope I get to the point where I can schedule them. Maybe I can get more viewers. Or what? Listeners, not viewers. Well, around the radio and watch radio, so I think they were viewers. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now. So I'm going to play my favorite sign-off.
I want you all to have a good day, good week, a good month, and a good year. Most of all, I want you to have a beautiful life. Thank you for being you, and TGYA, thank God you're alive.